Welcome, friends. I am Dr. V.K. Chauhan, homeopathic physician, and we are revising Lycopodium clavatum, which is a very important homeopathic remedy. And this is the part 5, clinical correlation. And we are clinically correlating the red line symptoms given under Allen's keynote. And this talk is good for BHMS students. So let us go for the first PQR. Lycopodium is indicated for the persons who are intellectually keen but physically weak. So this is the first part of this whole symptom. So we can correlate it, clinical correlation. We find that this important line gives us the idea about the constitutional profile of a Lycopodium client. When you talk about constitutional profile, we are talking in terms of the hidden meaning, that is, what are the things which are going to make him sick. A coin has got two sides, head and tail. If you are looking at the head side, the tail side is obscured from your vision, and that you need to understand or interpret what kind of a tail this particular coin has. So a constitution has got the head, which is visible, and invisible part which he carries within is the diathesis or predisposition. So predisposition we talk about as physician for certain diseases. We are concerned with certain diseases. And recent research studies suggest that the people who have the very high intellectual capacity, they have hyper brain status, they possess overexcitability. It is an inbuilt thing. God has given you intellect, it has given you overexcitability in various domains. And that particular hyperactivity will ultimately make you susceptible or predisposed to certain psychological disorder and certain physiological conditions involving elevated sensory, and ultimately you will find prolonged stress on your systems will undermine your immune system and inflammatory response. This implicates that the people with high IQ as being potential risk factor for affective disorder, for emotional disorder like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and for increased incidence of diseases related to immune system. ASD stands here for antisocial disorder. Now we are taking up the second line from the PQR1. Upper part of body is emaciated and lower part is semi-dropsical. What constitutional characteristics we find, how we are going to interpret that, what is the clinical interpretation we have. The lower part of body is dropsical, so it points to certain important diagnostic conditions we need to understand. So cor pulmonale is one of them. In future, at this moment, there can be many other conditions are there which we need to differentiate. Lower pedal edema caused by many other conditions, but most important condition is the congestive cardiac failure, which is the prime area which we need to know much more in detail. Other conditions are not that bad at times, so this is the only thing which is much more bad. And right sided heart failure, if you find in advanced stages, not in early stages, you will have JVP will be raised, liver will be enlarged and tender, and pedal edema is very important thing which you need to know. So other conditions which are important one which we need to immediately differentiate in looking at the lower limb edema is stasis or gravitational edema. Who are prone to gravitational edema, you see, people who stand for a very long time, like policemen. There are certain occupations involved with this, like guards, salesmen, military and police personnel, washerman, presswala. So all these people are going to have this kind of a problem. And then what happens? Another condition where we have the bilateral venous insufficiency. What are the risk factors for venous insufficiency? We have prolonged standing, of course, we have understood that, but pregnancy is an exciting cause, and exclusively this particular problem is seen with females. And there is a family history of varicosis. These veins, genetically, they are predisposed, they have diathesis to have the venous engorgement, or you can say varicose vein in their family. So they will be predisposed. Liver disorder is one important condition. We have cirrhosis where the protein levels are less. So pediledema will be the initial stage. It is generally starts with the lower limb and abdomen gets involved. And renal affections, please remember one thing. The protein losing nephropathy, we have the edema initially, it comes on the face and gradually it settles down to the lower limbs. Congestive cardiac failure, as we have been talking about, very important thing. And this is risk factors for congestive cardiac failure. You have to keep in mind hypertension, because prolonged hypertension will cause left ventricular hypertrophy and left ventricular failure, and ultimately it will settle down to right ventricular failure also. Congestive cardiac failure is a biventricular failure. Ventricular septal defect, atrial septal defect, and the lung pathology like chronic bronchitis, emphysema. These are the things. If you are a smoker, you are going to develop COPD, and COPD has got ultimate reflection on the right ventricle of the heart, and people develop cor pulmonale, congestive cardiac failure. So this is one thing, something which is very important. We have to keep in mind with lycopodium patients. Now, PQR1, again we have one more important point over there, especially the extremes of life, children and old people who are the rightful candidate who need lycopodium as a medicine. So he says extremes of life, children and old people. So let us see what are the conditions where we find in children's, and clinical correlation is extreme of age makes you vulnerable for many conditions due to weak immune system. In children's we have the weak immune system, in elderly we have the weak immune system. So they go hand in hand. So what are the children's complaints? We can understand the eruptive fevers, common cold, ear infection, influenza, bronchitis, gastroenteritis, sinusitis. These are the very common things which you find with your growing stages, early stages, younger age group. And old age people, they have osteoarthritis, heart condition, hypertension, coronary artery disease, heart failure, malignancy, respiratory diseases, as we have been talking about the chronic bronchitis, emphysema, COPD or col pulmonale. Alzheimer's disease is very important. One has to keep in mind osteoporosis, diabetes diabetes type 2 is more important in elderly, influenza, pneumonia, obesity, depression, herpes zoster. These are the conditions. Now we go to the PQR3, deep-seated progressive chronic diseases. And clinically, we have to understand what are the deep-seated chronic conditions. We have deep-seated points to miasmatic cause. Miasmatic cause of disease, which is chronic miasm. Chronic miasm never settles down. Ultimately, it is going to kill you. It is going to take you. So progressive means points to lifelong nature of disease, which requires ongoing medical attention, and these limit activity of daily living. Your quality of life, day-to-day quality, are going to be affected with these diseases. Like what are such chronic conditions we need to know? Heart diseases are there, like cancerous condition, lung conditions are there. We have central nervous system stroke, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, all these vital organs, whether it is your heart, whether it is your lung, whether it is your brain, whether it is your kidney. These are the life support systems we have. And if something happens to them, probably they are going to involve the other organ systems. They don't remain isolated for a very long time. They spill their deficiency with other organs. So chronic psoric miasmatic disorders, we have high risk features. How we'll come to know high risk features? In homeopathy, we have to understand the markers, the psoric traits, the psoric markers. They will give you the idea about the what are the chronic diseases in psoric miasm. And let us go and examine those particular benign psoric conditions which are going to trouble us. They are essential hypertension, primary hypertension, unknown cause of hypertension. Whenever we talk about idiopathic, whenever we talk about idiopathic, we are talking about the psoric miasm, irritable bowel syndrome, a functional disorder, non-organic erectile dysfunction is again a psoric problem. Premature ejaculation is a psoric problem. Simple schizophrenia is also predominantly psoric problem. So like chronic psychotic miasmatic disorders, so you have to identify what are the risk factors, what are the psychotic risk factors we have, and what are the diseases we are going to suffer from psychotic miasm. Type 2 diabetes mellitus, secondary hypertension, benign hypertrophy of prostate, renal and gallstones, fatty liver disease, paranoid schizophrenia. These are the things which are going to belong to the cases of psychotic miasmatic disorder domain. Let us see the syphilitic miasmatic. What are the syphilitic miasmatic risk factors we have and syphilitic miasmatic disorders we have to understand? All malignant conditions, all conditions where hypertension has developed some sort of a complications. Peripheral diabetic nephropathy, renopathy, peripheral neuropathy, diabetic ulcer, cancers, Alzheimer's disease, catatonic and hebephrenic schizophrenia are predominantly belong to the domain of syphilitic miasmatic dyscrasia. Now PQR4 in Allen's notes tells us about the pains. What kind of a pains are there? Aching, pressure, drawing, chiefly right-sided, and the time modality is very important for lycopodium, that is 4 to 8 p.m. These are the characteristic general, and clinically the pain, we know that it is a very unpleasant emotional sensation, or you can say physical sensation, sorry, emotional reaction to physical sensation, very, very painful condition. The pain of Sura. What kind of a psoric pains? How to differentiate? The pains are itchy, crawling, tickling and burning, worse winter morning, sunrise towards the meridian, midday, and emulation by warmth. Pseudosora pains are, they are neuralgic, sharp, piercing, twisting, stitching, worse at night, better by dry weather, during daytime. Nosebleed also relieves this tubercular symptoms. Now, psychotic pains are, what kind of a psychotic pains we have? They are sudden, they are intense, they are spasmodic, they are crampy and colicky. Worse rest, damp, rainy weather, evening, better by return of suppressed discharges. The pains of syphilis, we find that they seem lacking for the conditions present are deep, aching, agonizing, and especially worse at night. Sunset to sunrise aggravation is syphilitic. Warmth also aggravates, and better is sunrise to sunset. And these are better by abnormal discharges. Please remember, pains of syphilis. Generally, in syphilis, we have no pain because it takes away your defense mechanism. Pain is a defense mechanism. If you have the pain, it is a protective. You help whenever you have a pain in the limbs. You are not going to use the limbs, so you are going to protect that particular part. If there is inflammation, acute inflammation, it is going to go away with some passage of time. And emotional pain also. we don't like it and we try to get out of such emotional pain, maybe something which disturbs you mentally. So pain is protective. And here the syphilitic people who have peripheral neuritis, or you can say anesthetic anesthesia, so they cannot physically protect themselves. And there are certain central nervous system disorders like what the tertiary syphilis. We have tabes dorsalis and we have loss of pain. We cannot protect our body. And emotionally they have syphilitic involvement of the central nervous system, paralysis of insane. So they don't they any intellectual person, when at one person given time in his lifetime, is no more having that kind of a capacity to help himself. Say for example, some diagnostic we are talking about, so some problem where the central nervous system degeneration is there, Alzheimer, this is the biggest example for that. So let us go to the next uh, PQR. This is fifth PQR, affects right side. Our pain goes from right to left, throat, chest, abdomen, liver, ovaries, right sided, predominantly affected, and they can travel to the other side also. Clinical correlation in this particular situation is, it tells us about the physical predominance of affections in lycopodium. A specific side affinity is there. So most drugs have manifested their action more or less on either side of the body, both during the proving and during their use in diseases. The great question is on which side this action was more particularly manifested. This distinction, as well as the degree of this action, seem to be the best indication for the concerned remedy. Now we go to the PQR5, children who are weak, emaciated, with well developed head but puny, sickly bodies. Clinical correlation we have to go for. These are the young age children's, maybe 6 months, 6 to 12 months. Wasting is growth is retarded, which is severe retardation can be there. Mental changes are there sometimes, not always, I mean to say. The skin changes, they may be infrequent. Hair changes, yes, frequent. Appetite may be good. They, these children may have diarrhea, which may be infrequent. Hepatomegaly may be absent, liver disease may be absent, stunning may be severe in early stages. What we are talking about, certain biochemical changes. Serum albumin mildly decrease. So what are these features pointing to? They point to the nutritional marasmus. Protein allergy malnutrition occurs due to the lack of protein and calories, occurring in infant and young children and usually associated with infections. So such children will find that they have maybe at times normal. Their face is very characteristic old man's face, anxious look. Their muscles are thin fat, and edema may be present later on, but then the total spectrum changes from protein calorie malnutrition marasmus to kwashiorkor. So things are slightly different. Yes, of course, albuminuria, as albumin is less, so we need to uh, uh, take help of certain investigations also. Simply observing the patient is having its advantage, but then further it can be reinforced your finding, and investigation will give you the confidence in diagnosing specific diagnostic conditions, what is really wrong with the child, so that will give you confidence in treating the child also. So anyway, we go to the other part of the PQR5. Baby cries all day, sleeps all night. So this is a peculiar symptom in case of lycopodium child. And clinical correlation here is above feature points to crying and sleep pattern of the baby, to be very frank. Newborn baby sleeps 14 to 19 hours a day. We have to keep in mind and check if the baby is crying for. If at all the baby is crying, the first thing is to find out what is the cause of crying. Whether the child is crying because of hunger, or there is a wind which is trapped in the GIT, or baby needs change of diaper, or there is certain clothes which are not comfortable to child. Maybe he is wetted the clothes, wants to be held. Room is too hot or too cold, or the child may be sick. Maybe simple sickness like the nose is blocked. So there could be four basic cries. We have to interpret the cries. What sort of a cry is there? Simply crying is not enough. What sort of the cries are there? So the hunger cry is rhythmic, rise and fall, demanding, not desperate type of cry. The cry of pain is very loud grasp, shrieks. The bored or grumbling child, such cry is low pitched, not demanding, and it is incessant when ignored. The angry cry is loud, demanding cry, not a type of cry until about 6 months of age. Before the 6 months of age, you need not diagnose this condition. Now, so PQR 6 tells us about ailments from fright. We'll take this particular point, and from clinical point of view, what interpretation clinical correlation we are going to get is the fear as an exciting cause here. Exciting cause is very, very important from the point of view of prescription in homeopathy, and fear is one of the seven universal emotions, you can say primary emotions generally, and it is an adaptive transient state elicited through confrontation with threatening stimulus. Following the fright, the next emotion which comes, or you can say there comes the fear response. It is a behavioral response in humans. So what is this behavior response gets we are what kind of a behavior response we'll have? That is, either you will attack the source of fear. Maybe there is a dog or cat which is threatening you. You will attack, or you will run away, or you will freeze. Or risk assessment, what kind of a risk you have, whether this cat is in cage or lion is in cage, whether you are going to scream and ask for help, or you will hide. If some thief comes inside your room, you are afraid, but then you are hidden inside, you are frozen with fear. So these are the reactions. The following are the fear behavior responses. What kind of a response comes next? That is very important for us. Anyway, the facial expression of fear you will find in this particular diagram. And fear is a very common reaction to events or objects. But a fear becomes phobia when it interferes with the ability to function and maintain a consistent quality of life. Now, sometimes there is a fear is a very deep seated. You are afraid of dogs, so you will not cross the street, you will not go to that particular house where the dog is. So it becomes a very big handicap for you in life. And people start taking extreme measures to avoid water, spider, or people, or there are certain public or phobic states, acute phobic states are there. So these are the things which are very, very important for us. Now, PQR6 also tells us about anger. So there is an exciting cause which is anger. The clinical correlation is anger as an exciting cause, and anger is one of the seven, again, one of the seven universal emotions which arise when we are blocked from pursuing a goal, or we are treated unfairly, and its reaction has got you can say, four stages, like how the anger builds up. We have the built up stage, then spark, then explosion, and then aftermath. So anger can be positive and useful emotion if it is expressed appropriately. The most difficult part is where to use and how to use, and how much amount of you have to use the anger, that is debatable. So the face of anger, you can see what are the features there. The long-term physical effects of uncontrolled anger includes increased anxiety, high blood pressure, headache, and a stroke. Anger management includes regular exercise, learning relaxation techniques, and they will require counseling also. Now, let us go to the PQR6. Again, one small segment of this PQR is mortification or vexation with reserved displeasure. This sentence has got many dimensions. There is fright, anger, mortification, vexation. So we are here at this point going to clinically correlate mortification and exciting cause, or you can say reverse reserved displeasure. Mortification is a feeling of being completely humiliated. The word humiliation has its roots in Latin word for death, mors. And what are the effects of humiliation? It can lead to serious mental health problem. Say, for example, generalized anxiety and depression can be the result. The public humiliation can be crippling. It can cause a person to abandon his or her interest or stop pursuing certain goals in life. Children who have been humiliated by their parents may suffer from chronically low self-esteem as well as host of mental health problems. The next PQR here is the seventh: avaricious, greedy, miserly, malicious, pusillanimous. This is all mental generals we have, and clinically what we are going to correlate is these are the total traits, mental state. It is your personality traits. Avaricious. These people are greedy and concerned with gaining wealth. Greedy, they want more and more, especially money, food, drink, fame. Miserly, they hoard their money and lack generosity. Malicious, they are intentionally causing harm to someone. Maybe it is their friends or their family members. So, and pusillanimous is who lacks courage. They are coward people. They are fearful people. They are the people who are most afraid in day-to-day life. So this personality, having these kind of ingredients in a personality, what kind of a personality is there? The repetitive pattern that involves how they think. The personality is, the core features are how they think, how they feel, how they act, and how they perceive in reference to self in their surrounding, in social situation. So avaricious, greedy, miserly traits are commonly associated with narcissist personality disorder. Malicious traits are associated with psychopathic personality disorder, antisocial personality. And pusillanimous trait is found in association with avoidant personality disorder. They are very cowardly people. They don't want to face public. They don't want to go on interaction with people. So they are loners. That is a handicap of their personality which will not allow them to pursue certain occupations. So again, we are going to see the same PQR7. What What kind of a personality is a narcissist personality? They are avaricious, greedy, miserly. They have extreme sense of importance. The need for excessive admiration. They are preoccupied with success. They feel that they are special people and they have certain special entitlements in life. They have certain privileges. They exploit others. They have lack of empathy. They are envious of others and they show very strong attitudes. So these are the people, narcissistic personality, who harbors the personality trait which is avaricious, greasy, and miserly. Now, malicious. This is a component of personality trait, and such malicious people, they are intentionally going to cause some harm to someone in the society, maybe in their family or maybe in the social situation. So they have psychopathic antisocial personality type of personality they harbor, and such people are glibness, or they have superficial charm. They are very self-centered, self-justifying. They lack emotional depth. They have lack of remorse and guilt feeling doesn't touch them. They are deceitful and manipulative. They are uncommitted. They are unemphatic. They are unreliable and reckless people. They are aggressive people. They are suspicious and intolerant people. The most biggest problem they are going to create for their wives, they will always be suspicious of her faithfulness. Now, pusillanimous is the next trait which we are going to take in the PQR 7 and above points to the mental trait, which is we can explain in the manner like who lacks courage, who are afraid, and who are fearful, and who are covered. So these are the people, and their personality is predominant personality is avoidant cowardly personality, or you can say avoidant personality disorder. So what are the characteristics of these people? They are shy, they are timid, they are socially inhibited, they have low self-esteem, they are avoiding intimacy, and they have inferiority complex. They want close relationship, but they cannot develop the close relationship because they rarely take social risk. They avoid social interactions. They are hypersensitive to rejection and negative feedback, and it makes them to withdraw. They become more withdrawn gradually, and ultimately they are preoccupied with negative perception of themselves and whatever the environment they live in. PQR 8 tells us about irritable, peevish, and cross. So, this is the only thing which is going to take up from this particular line. Total symptom syndrome. Clinical correlation is above points to temperamental mental traits. Irritable tendency to be easily annoyed, peevishness showing irritable disposition, and cannot endure opposition or contradiction. So they do not accept behavior and opinion that is different from their own. So such people who harbor this trait, irritability is a personality dimension. It is characterized by a tendency to be angry and reactive to the slightest provocation and disagreement. This differs from anger. Anger is affective disorder, emotional disorder. Affective is emotional disorder state, and reactive aggravation, reactive aggression, which is a behavior. So we are talking about the behavior. Irritability is a part of various disorders in DSM-4. There are many personality types which may harbor this kind of a particular trait, and these include generalized anxiety disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder. Nicotine withdrawal can also lead to this kind of a behavior, and there are people who have been having pathological gambling, so these people also become irritable, easily irritable prevision cross. So let us see. The patient weeps all day, cannot calm down herself, very high, very sensitive, even cries when thanked. The prolonged crying that persists without reason is not normal, generally not to be taken as a normal. It may be a kind of a trait for lycopodium. For us, we need to find out what could be the cause of this kind of a behavior. And we have to rule out there may not be any serious condition which is responsible for this. So we need to inquire what is going on in the life, what causes difficulty in managing emotions. Emotional management is a very important part of our life. And the people who weep all day, they could be acute grief if there is a history of any loss of family member, like chronic grief, strong grief that lasts over a long period of time, continually experiencing extreme distress. So this is a abnormal grief. Generally, it requires a medication or you can say counseling. Depression is one very common condition where you will find this symptom. Depressive episodes is marked with feeling sad, irritable, empty, and loss of pleasure. They don't experience the goodness in life. Anything which they enjoy, they are unable to enjoy those things. And people who are very sensitive, you see, they are sentimental. An excess of sentiment or sensibility, there is good tears of happiness and tears of being sentimental. Now we have PQR10, which is going to tell us about important aspect here is the first thing which we are going to take up is the dread of men. Clinical correlation of dread of men is it is known as entrophobia, a form of anxiety disorder. Misandry is hatred of male men, and its counterpart is misgyny, means hatred of hatred for female. And sometimes someone with androphobia doesn't hate men; they are afraid of men. Androphobic. So, what is the cause of androphobia? You need to understand that a deep traumatic experience with a male during childhood may trigger androphobia. The symptoms are today, but the cause is buried in your past. This includes child abuse, sexual assault, or bullies. This phobia of men may carry over into adulthood also. It causes anxiety or fearfulness in presence of males in society or work setting. The treatment part includes not only homeopathic remedies you are going to give, but then there is a very important aspect of counseling, exposure therapy, and CBT can be very, very important. The PQR10 tells us about fear of solitude, fear of being alone. So, clinical correlation we have. The above points to dread of solitude or fear of being alone. Fear of solitude is known as autophobia, a word derived from two Greek words. Autos means self and phobos means fear. And what we need to know is it is a abnormal and persistent fear of solitude, of or you can say being alone. Sufferers of this fear experience undue anxiety, even though they realize that Being alone does not threaten their well being. The next is the dread of men, irritable and melancholy. And next symptom which we are going to take up is irritable and melancholy, and its clinical correlation is that it points to irritable and melancholy emotional state. Irritability is a diagnostic symptom of major depressive disorder in children and adolescents, but not in adults. And this has been seen in DSM-4 and ICD-10. Both do not show that depression in adults is not there, but in children and adolescent is there. Depressed people may present with symptoms like irritability, impatience, hostility, and anger outburst, even at very, very small, minor things. So, irritability is the absence of either sad mood or loss of interest in comparison was rare. So, irritability is depressive disorder, major depressive disorder, was associated with early age of onset, lifetime persistence, comorbidity with anxiety, and impulse control disorder. We need to see next. The next PQR is complexion pale, dirty, unhealthy, shallow, with deep furrows, looks older than he is. So this particular point we are going to take up here now, and it tells us clinical correlation is that the above points to the premature old age with anemic state. Now, paleness of skin suggests chronic anemic stage. Dirty, unhealthy, shallow skin refers to the skin that has lost its natural luster and brightness. As aging takes place, facial skin appears yellow or brown with increasing dryness, wrinkling, and thinness. Our facial skin is much more exposed to the sun rays in with the rest comparison to the rest of the body. And in sun rays, what happens that ultraviolet rays they are going to create the problem in the skin. So the aging of skin takes place because of overexposure to at times to sun rays also. In tropics, this is much more commonly seen, but the same thing you will not see in people who are living in the very cold climate where the sun rays are not all that having ultraviolet rays. So they look older than what their age is. Wrinkles are the natural part of aging, and they are most prominent of the sun exposed parts such as face, neck, hands, and forearm. When wrinkle becomes deep, they are known as furrows, and these furrows are marked around the eyes, mouth, and neck. Deep nasolabial folds contribute to sadder and older look of a person. Please remember. Now, PQR 11, we are talking about fan like motion of the Elanasi. We are taken up this particular part, and clinical correlation is that fan like motion points to condition known as nasal flares or flaring. Nasal flaring is a symptom of breathing difficulties. It can be a serious condition in children, and they may require emergency management also. The causes they range from temporary illness to long-term conditions, and these include following. This particular diagram shows us the normal nostril and flared nostril. With inspiration, nostrils flare up. So exercise induced flaring can be there, which is a temporary condition. Then we can have asthma, acute asthmatic attack, which can be associated with wheezing, tightness of chest, breathlessness, and this breathlessness can cause nasal flare. Epiglottitis, which is very common in children in the age group of 2 to 6 years. due to H. influenzae type B, which is a very important infection, and that can cause this kind of a presentation. Again, one more important condition which we should keep in mind always, pneumonia and bronchiolitis. These are the serious condition where the nasal flare is present. Nasal flare is a condition which is associated with certain predominant conditions involving the chest. So, whenever they are present, they should be seen in terms of you have to examine the patient and exclude serious conditions. Now, the PQR tells us about the catarrh. Dry nose, stopped at night, must breathe through mouth. We are going to take up this small part only. So, this is the nasal stoppage at night. The biggest cause is the nasal congestion, which gets worse at night. Congestion, also known as stuffy nose, there is a fluid buildup in the tissues, means the mucous membrane, nasal mucosa gets congested because of allergic conditions, and they can swell 10 times of their original conditions, so they can block the nasal passage. And this narrow upper nasal airway makes it difficult to inhale and exhale through their nose. So, stuffiness is caused by excess mucus blocking the nasal passage. And let us see what are the causes generally you will find contribute toward this kind of a phenomena. And this nighttime congestion increases on lying down and improves when set getting up early morning or while standing upright in the day. Mucus is constantly draining naturally due to the force of gravity. But once you adopt a horizontal posture, this benefit is no more with you, and you feel that the nose is easily get obstructed whenever you lie down. Very important fact we have to remember with horizontal position is that gastroesophageal reflux disorder is one thing which is going to worsen the condition. As what you find that the symptoms of nasal congestion, sore throat, cough, post nasal drip, wheezing, and hoarseness tend to become much more worse at night and first thing in the morning. So, the cause in the night when you adopt a horizontal position, the acid regurgitates from the stomach to your throat. Next line in the PQR 12 is snuffles. Child starts from sleep rubbing its nose of root of nose and frontal sinuses, crust and elastic plugs. So there is a lot of mucus which is dried up in the nasal cavities, and clinically what we can correlate is the above feature point to baby snuffles. Snuffle is a blocked nose, the common in babies under 6 months of age, as the normal mucus that collects in the nose, which is difficult for the baby to clear. Most cases of snuffle are due to the cold, or you can say simple upper respiratory tract infection. The baby's nose doesn't have the cartilage. This is the anatomical fact we have to bear in mind, so that the nose is pressed or congested, it becomes flat easily, gets blocked easily, and opening of his nostril is blocked. The baby can't breathe and suffocates. There is a blocked nose. And then child cries. The one peculiar thing about babies is babies are obligatory nose breathers. Obligatory nose breather means that they can only breathe through their nose. The only time the newborn breathes through their mouth is when they are crying. So whenever the nose is blocked, the child has got no alternative except to cry. So these babies will almost irritable and they will be having lot of crying. Now we go to next PQR 13. Here we find diphtheria, faucious brownish red, deposited spreads from right to left nostril or descend from nose to right tonsil of worse after sleep and from cold drinks. So what is the clinical correlation we have? These above features point to diphtheria. It is very, very clear diagnostically here. And children and adults who have diphtheria, they often need to be hospitalized for treatment. There are two reasons. This is a serious condition. This is a notifiable condition. The next important fact we have to bear in mind, and it is a contagious disease. So they must be isolated in intensive care unit because diphtheria can spread person to person very fast, and especially for those people who are at high risk is who are not been immunized against this particular disease. So this is the diagram which is depicting the membrane which is formed over the tonsil of the throat. The diphtheria is a serious infection, as we all know, caused by strains of bacteria known as Corynebacterium diphtheriae, which has got capacity to make toxins, and these toxins, they really cause the problem. Like they lead to difficulty in breathing, the patient goes into the heart failure, and paralysis and even death is the outcome. We have to remember this, that the National Immunization Program recommends in India vaccinations for infant, children, teens, and adults to prevent the diphtheria. The next PQR is 14th. Everything test sore. Eructations, heartburn, water brush, sore vomiting. This is the characteristic particular general, and clinically we correlate is above features point to sour taste during the febrile stage with vomiting. Everything tests sore causing loss of appetite. The most common causes are GERD. As the cardiac sphincter remains open, it results in acid reflux, and which ultimately causes sour eructations, heartburn, water brush, and sour vomiting. The other causes, they are also there, and they include dehydration, dry mouth, can alter the taste of mouth. Smoking can also, it dulls the sense of taste and causes hyperacidity. So smoking behavior is one more important thing for that. Infection or illness, common cold, sinus infection, alter the taste of mouth. Iatrogenic causes, like sometimes the people are undergoing chemotherapy or undergoing antibiotic therapy, can cause, they can have the bad throat taste in the mouth. And the last thing which we're likely to forget is that the advancing age, which results in loss of taste buds or nerves which are going to pick up the sensation of taste, may also feel the bad taste or sour taste in the mouth. The PQR 15 tells us about the canine hunger. The more he eats, the more he craves. Headache if he does not eat. So that is a peculiar symptom with lycopodium. Clinical correlation is this feature points to obsessional eating. And eating larger quantities and more frequently can be a symptom of physical as well as certain mental conditions, psychiatric condition also, and certain physical conditions also. Anyway, so we'll explore about these particular conditions. Depending upon the symptoms and medical history is very, very important. We can have a support of suitable diagnostic investigations, and these are going to help us to narrow down to the diagnosis. And important diagnostic conditions which we need to keep in mind is a hyperthyroidism, diabetes mellitus, especially in elderly, type 2 diabetes, stress and anxiety, depression. All these things make you to eat something and you feel munching, which gives you the gratification. The mechanism is such, and you like sweet things, which is you can swallow it and you can feel happy keeping it in mouth. So these are the carbohydrates. Most of the times you are eating is the carbohydrate, and these carbohydrates, when they go inside your system, they have a peculiar nature. They secrete in the central nervous system serotonin. This is a neurotransmitter. Once the surge of neurotransmitter is there, you feel happy. So you get happiness out of eating, and that is the one reason the people are obsessed with eating, because they are under stress, they are under anxiety, they may be depressed. So premenstrual syndrome can be having a depression, bulimia nervosa, hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia is also there, where you feel like eating. So let us see the next symptom in PQR 16. We are going to pick up the next line, that is, he feels bloated, fermentation in abdomen with loud grumbling, croaking, especially lower abdomen. So this part we are going to see in clinical correlation, and according to our understanding, these features can involve upper GIT complaints, which we call dyspepsia, and lower GIT complaint, generally which are due to, majority of them they are because of irritable bowel syndrome. So clinical correlation for upper GIT condition, what is dyspepsia? Dyspepsia is known as simple indigestion, or you can say discomfort or pain that occurs in upper abdomen, and it is associated with eating or drinking. Soon after eating or drinking, it may happen. It is just not a disease. You have to remember this particular fact. Dyspepsia is a common problem, and approximately 30% people are suffering from it. This is a common symptom having other constellation which include bloating, discomfort, feeling too full, nausea, and wind formation, or I can say gas formation. So indigestion is often a sign of underlying problem such as gastroesophageal reflux disease is one of the very foremost important disease we have. We have gastric ulcer or gallbladder dyspepsia, gallbladder diseases, rather than condition of its own. It is an offshoot of these conditions. Dyspepsia is an offshoot of GERD, gallbladder disease. It is called dyspepsia, and we can define it as a persistent or recurrent pain or discomfort in the upper abdomen. Now we are going to take up the lower GIT complaint, which predominantly these symptoms are because of irritable bowel syndrome is a common disorder that affects the large intestine, and sign and symptoms include cramping, abdominal pain, bloating, gas and diarrhea, or constipation, or mixed. This is a chronic condition most of the time. So it involves, as we have seen in this particular diagram, the large intestine, there can be constipation. So there is a irregularity in the peristaltic movement. The rhythmic movement is lost. It is a spasmodic constriction in one particular segment. So next part is the dilated, which is the distended part, and that causes pain, bloating sensation, fullness, heaviness, diarrhea or constipation. Anything can happen in this condition. So we have a Rome criteria to diagnose this. It includes abdominal pain and discomfort lasting on average at least 1 day a week in the last 3 months, associated with at least two of these conditions, like are pain and discomfort are related to defecation, and frequency of defecation is altered, or stool consistency is altered. So these are the few things which have to be there before we diagnose irritable bowel syndrome. We need to remember at this moment also that the IBS can be divided into the, broadly speaking, three conditions. And these are based on the symptomatic presentation, like constipation predominant IBS, diarrhea predominant IBS, or mixed IBS. The PQR 17 tells us about the constipation since puberty, since last confinement, when away from home. Away from home, maybe you are hospitalized or you are in travel, of infants with ineffectual urging, rectum contracts and protrudes during stool, developing piles. So we have the exciting cause of constipation, we have sometimes maintaining cause of constipation and complication of constipation. They go hand in hand. So here clinically we can explore the constipation and its exciting causes. So very common condition where we'll find constipation is the slow transit constipation. The very important fact people are going to tell everybody that you are not eating fiber. It is the commonest cause of constipation. But however, other causes can also contribute like irritable bowel syndrome, traveler or other changes in daily routine, lack of exercise, immobility causes illness or aging can cause, medicine use, overuse of laxative, pregnancy. Constipation is sometimes a sign of another health condition such as diabetes, hypothyroidism, hypercalcemia. The PQR 18 tells us about the red sand in urine on diaper, especially in case of children. Child cries before urinating and there is pain in the back relieved by urinating, renal colic, especially right-sided, that is lycopodium. The clinical correlation is that above features point to renal calculi and stones in the renal tract form in the kidney when they are small particles which are usually dissolved in the urine become oversaturated and begin to form small crystals. They precipitate urinary segments, sediments precipitate forming crystals and they form stone. Small crystals can continue to grow into larger solid crystals which resemble sand or you can say stones. The symptom, very common symptom is the pain in abdomen, on sides, renal angle, blood in the urine. It can be macroscopic or microscopic hematuria, nausea and vomiting, which is sympathetic nervous system involvement because of reaction of pain will cause nausea. Discomfort while urinating or frequency of urination can be because of associated with urinary tract infection. The PQR 19 tells us about the importance of the young man from onanism or sexual excess, penis, small, cold, relax. We'll take up this part only. So clinical correlation is, it points toward the importance of young person. The erectile dysfunction or impotency is inability to get or maintain an erection for successful sexual intercourse. The causes in young, they are number one, anxiety is the most common cause. You can call it nervousness or performance anxiety. This often creates a negative spiral because failure to achieve an erection causes yet more anxiety and stress. Once this particular symptom is there, it is going to have his friends like depression and stress, ultimately which will contribute towards further erectile dysfunction and they will reduce the libido also. Loss of libido will take place. Some people they are taking steroids to build up muscles. They are at high risk to develop erectile dysfunction. Hormonal causes we have to remember hyper or hypothyroid state can contribute. Iatrogenic causes like people are taking prescriptions for depression, heart conditions, or they are being treated for hypertension, they can almost always develop erectile dysfunction. So what is the treatment part? The counseling therapy may be very important because we are going to deal with the stress, depression or performance anxiety. The combined with medical treatment like maybe lycopodium or something and we have a smart counseling part for erectile dysfunction is going to help us. The next part is the PQR19, which we are going to take up, is the old man with strong desire but imperfect erections falls asleep during a browse. The above picture, clinically speaking, they are pointing to the importance in old people. Old people means maybe over 40 years of age. Erectile dysfunction is the inability to get or maintain the erection for successful sexual intercourse. And here we are going to look into the causes in the old age. The most common cause of erectile dysfunction in older men are conditions that block the blood vessels, especially in the region of the penis, and they could be because of atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is an old age problem. It is aging. Aging is going to cause atherosclerosis. There can be many other disease comorbidity which will be there, like diabetes mellitus, dyslipidemia, and food habits. They can also predispose to atherosclerosis. Hormonal causes, hyper or hypothyroid state is there. Iatrogenic, we all know that certain drugs which are prescribed for depression and hypertension can contribute towards this. And again, treatment part is that we have to go for counseling, identify the medicine, change in lifestyle, and concurrent use of medication is very, very important. Now, we go to the PQR19 where we are going to deal with the premature emission or premature ejaculation. The premature ejaculation occurs when a man ejaculates sooner during the sexual intercourse than he or his partner would like. The common causes includes prevalence. Generally, you will see in the cross section of society, the epidemiology is prevalence is 1 in 3 persons. Very common condition. Common age group is 18 to 59 years of age. Low serotonin level in the brain. Psychological conditions which are going to contribute, they are depression, stress, guilt, unrealistic expectations about sexual performance, lack of confidence, and relationship problem. So relationship problem is with one. So there can be a very specific condition you have with one partner the problem, not with the another partner. Anyway, the treatment part is the behavior therapy is very, very important. Concomitant use of medication. Maybe your medicine is argentum nitricum or lycopodium. The PQR20 tells us about the dryness of vagina, burning during and after intercourse. So let us see what are the conditions where dryness of vagina takes place. Normally, physiologically speaking, the walls of vagina may be kept lubricated with a thin layer of clear fluid. The hormone which is responsible for this is the estrogen, which maintains the fluid level in the lining of vagina and keeps the vagina healthy, thick, and elastic. Now, a drop in the estrogen level reduces the amount of moisture available and it can cause at any age, maybe there is a early menopause or there is some other concomitant diseases, and post-menopausal female will definitely have this problem. So let us again recapture the causes in normal subject, in the healthy normal subject, if the vaginal dryness is there. So probably the one cause which is very important is not enough foreplay before sex. One has to keep in mind menopause is common, ovrectomy, childbirth, and breastfeeding could be the reason time in the life of the person. And iatrogenic causes like chemotherapy, radiation therapy for cancer, and antidepressant medicine may be the cause for this. Anti-estrogen medicines are used in the treatment of fibroid and endometriosis, but then they can also have this pitfall, a adverse drug reaction. The PQR20 physometra, we are going to take up the physometra. Physometra is a distension of uterine cavity which is filled with the gas. The physometra, uterine tympanicity, this is the old terminology which has been used by old homeopaths, and we find that the description is there are two types. Type 1, true idiopathic physometra, where the air is formed within the cavity of the womb, or you can say uterus, may be retained for several months and it becomes distended to a considerable magnitude, and then suddenly the air goes out, and that gives you the appearance of physometra. The another condition which is very very important is the type 2. It is a secondary variety of physometra, which is probably, in all seriousness, we can understand it is because of some septic condition on the uterus. Maybe there is a fetus, dead fetus, which is decomposing, or any extraneous substance remaining in the uterus after parturition, or cancerous condition, which is having some sort of a secondary infection. From all the efflua, putrefying processes are fetid and offensive, and maybe many of them may be inflammable because they produce the methane gas over there. In these cases, there may be serious constitutional symptoms and even putrid fever. Putrid fever means septic state. It is an old terminology for septic fever. And these particular lines are taken up from diseases peculiar to women and children by H. N. Gurse. He was a homeopathic physician. So he described all these conditions. But nevertheless, physometra is not a normal condition nowadays. If you find any such case, please rule out there is some septic condition is there, some sort of some infection is in settling in the uterus. Now we are going to have the PQR21, discharge of blood from genitals during every stool. So bloody discharge from genitals during every stool. In males, let us find out what are the causes we have to rule out. One is the prostatitis, bacterial infection of prostate. Second can be BHE, simple benign hypertrophy of prostate, can lead to small amount of bleeding in urine, and shear prostate. Usually, most of the time, for a very long duration of time, you will find that it is asymptomatic. Bladder cancer is very important, and this is the very first symptom. Hematuria is the very first, painless hematuria is the very first important symptom which will persist off and on. Rule out bladder cancer. Now, in case of female, bloody vaginal discharge could be because of cervical polyp, endometrial polyp, gonococcus cervicitis, or chlamydia infection can be ruled. There, you have to rule it out. You have to go for examination, local examination. CS cervix also needs to be locally explored. Endometrial cancer needs to be investigated. And especially, please remember that the postmenopausal females are predisposed. They are the high risk people to have this problem. Now, the PQR22 fetus appears to be turning somersaults. Very interesting sim. The clinical correlation is above feature points to quickening. These fetal movements are known as quickening. The child which is kicking around, or there is a fetal movement, pregnant woman generally feels that the child is moving inside. So it is a very common kind of a activity of fetus when the child is growing and thriving, healthy child. These are noticed during the fifth month onwards in the pregnancy. Fetal activity grows more coordinated as she can turn somersaults. Not all the movements can be felt actually. There can be some small movements which we can see on ultrasound, three-dimensional ultrasound. You can see the baby is doing what he is suckling, kicking around, somersaulting. Babies spend plenty of their time moving their hands, exploring the uterus, hiccoughing, changing sides, and even doing somersaults. So this is a normal kind of a thing. Now next thing is PQR23, which we are going to talk about. The hernia, right-sided, has cured many cases, especially children's. You see, in children's, most of the hernias, very common hernias, are self-limiting. They go away with their age. Please, we have to keep in mind. So clinical correlation is a hernia is a protrusion of intestine through a weak point in the abdominal musculature. So these are the common sites of the hernia generally you will encounter in your day-to-day practice. The hernia is caused due to the raised intra-abdominal pressure, and these raised intra-abdominal pressure is during the lifting of weight, constipation, coughing and sneezing. The most common type of hernia is the inguinal hernia, and in adulthood you will find is incisional hernia is there. Femoral hernia is very common in females. Umbilical hernia is very common in kids and females, especially pregnancy is going to predispose. And hiatus hernia, which is not seen because it is in the diaphragm, which you will be able to examine on ultrasound, or you can say on barium upper GIT. So hernia in children, what umbilical hernia is a protrusion of intestine and mo- uh, uh, momentum. It is not momentum, it is momentum through the abdominal wall at navel. In kids, a bulge appears in the umbilical region, which is noticeable when the baby cries or stands. By the 1 year of age, umbilical hernia usually closes spontaneously by itself. Nearly all hernias close by the age of 5 years in children. The inguinal hernia in children is a protrusion of abdominal cavity contained through the inguinal canal. And these inguinal canal hernias, they are two types, direct and indirect. The direct protrudes through the weak point in the fascia of the abdominal wall and usually seen in adults. However, indirect hernia, it protrudes through the inguinal ring and is ultimately may be result of failure of embryonic closure. So developmental cause is there, and it is most commonly seen in children. Pneumonia. PQR24 tells us about pneumonia, which is neglected and maltreated base of the right lung involved, especially Hassan's absorption or expectoration. So lycopodium is going to help us in fast recovery. So what is the clinical correlation? Lung inflammation causes bacterial or viral infection in which the air sacs or alveoli, they get pus filled and become solid. Inflammation may affect both lungs, double pneumonia, or only one lung, simple pneumonia. So this is the nomenclature we should know about it. The stages of pneumonia, we all know that there are four stages. Number one is congestive, number two is a red hepatization, number three is a gray hepatization, and number fourth stage is a resolution. So delayed resolution means the recovery is delayed. Recovery is delayed when you have low immunity. Maybe the child is having low immunity. Maybe the old age is the culprit where the patient has got no immunity. So immunity is not there. Even the fever may not be there. The temperature will not rise. In pneumonia, we have the high temperature. There are, I have seen many cases for old age people where we see the fever is not that much. And we are astonished why the pulse and fever is not rising, because it is the only thing which we need to see first. Generally, we see the pulse and temperature. We can miss sometimes. These are the vital things. So there is a value of systematic examination. Whenever the patient comes, don't ignore the basics of physical examination. So delayed resolution is a commonly occurring condition in old age and low immune status. Thank you. Thank you very much for patient listening.